I've been asked a few times to make a video on how to replace a fridge compressor, which is actually a very basic fridge repair to perform, but I'll show you how I change it. Now this little compressor 134A, the starting device, PTC starter there, we've replaced it with another one, but it just doesn't run properly. So this compressor has come to the end of its useful life, and I'm going to show how I replace it. Now if you have a look at the welding they've done there, I use silver solder or a copper to copper rod when welding, but this is something they refer to as fridge brazing. So it's actually a welding that's got a very high melting point, and often when you try and remove this, you got to use so much heat that you actually burn the pipes to pieces, especially on this one on the high side, which has got a steel attached to copper, but it's got the brazing here. You'll see brazing there, and on the little pencil dryer as well, there's brazing there. Now the first thing I normally do is we get all the gas out of the system, and the way I do it, I'll just chop the capillary off very close to the dryer. Got a little capillary cutter, cut the cap tube off. There it is, it's blowing gas out on both sides, and while it's blowing gas out, we can remove all the brackets that holds the compressor in, and the next step will be to remove these pipes. Now on some of them I apply an awful lot of heat on the compressor pipe. We're going to throw this compressor away anyway, so I burn this pipe to the point where it's not usable anymore, and the welding will loosen and we pull it out. If we apply the same amount of heat to the pipe that we want to reuse, we're going to destroy it. But if you don't feel confident doing that, just take a pipe cutter and cut the pipe off very close to the compressor. This little charge line we'll just throw away, especially on the steel pipe. If you burn that steel pipe to a very red, then you destroy the steel pipe. You can't use that section again, so you got to be very careful. Okay, I've pulled this pipe out of the high side, the steel pipe. I concentrated a lot of heat on this tube here. I almost got this copper to a shining red color, but I made sure I didn't overheat this section because we're going to use it again. Same with the pencil dryer. The suction is still connected, but I'll just leave it. It's still blowing a little bit of gas off there. I don't want to pull the suction out while there's still pressure. But I got the compressor I'm going to replace it with. Now I've been using these compressors, Aruki 134A. There's all the specifications on it, 180 watt, which I think is suitable for this fridge, and I haven't had a problem with them yet. Now while I'm waiting for this gas to blow off, this compressor is still attached here with this two brackets. Now all you do is take a pliers, bend that little bit straight, and then you can remove the compressor. Okay, I've removed the two brackets at the bottom. I started heating this suction pipe up to get it out, but it was quite difficult to lift this up. So, seeing we're going to throw the compressor away anyway, I've cut this pipe off the compressor, and all we need to do is apply heat on this now, and then instead of sliding the pipe up, we slide this piece down and we remove it. Okay, I've got that pipe off there. You can still see it's still blowing a little bit, but this is 134A. I don't mind taking it off when there's still a bit of pressure. This is the little piece of pipe that was on the compressor, which we're just going to throw away. And now we can remove the compressor. Compressor has got a defrost tray on top of it. Now I'd like to reuse the same tray again if I can. Now they normally glue it onto the top, so with the hat in position, it's very awkward to get this compressor out. So I'm going to try and loosen this glue on this defrost tray before I remove the compressor. If not, we can get it out there. It's a bit of a tight squeeze though. Okay, I've taken the compressor out with this defrost tray and all. That glue seems to be quite well stuck in there. So I'm going to take this onto the workbench and take a long screwdriver and see if I can pry it off. But the compressor is out of the fridge now, and it's ready to accept a new one. This is the new compressor. It comes wrapped in plastic and it was packed in this box. This is the box, and in here they've got some rubbers, little packet of screws and washers, and the dust cover with all the mounting rubbers and that. Now the first thing that I normally do is take these rubbers and you just push them in through these holes, and there should be 4 of them, 1 in each hole. There, I've mounted the 4 rubbers in its place here. They also send with these little metal tubes now that you'll use only when you attach your compressor with bolts onto the fridge, but this one has got these pins that stick out the body, and it's got these little plates that mount it, so we don't need that. But before I put the compressor in its place, it's a good time to just clean all the dust off there, because once the compressor is mounted you really can't get to all the spaces. Okay, I've cleaned all the dust off there. This is the compressor we're going to put in. Now these 2 tubes at the end, the 2 thicker ones, the suction ones, the inside is a 1/4 inch, which is the same as that, but because there's welding on here, sometimes they don't go in easily. Even the high side one, the 3/16 ones inside this hole, because it's been welded before, the tolerances are so tight it's difficult to put in. So what I do is I knock a little swager in here that just stretches the tube ever so slightly so it can fit better. But this compressor, normally it comes packaged with a little bit of gas under pressure, which we pull the little tube out, but I pull the smaller one, the high side one, out first, release the pressure. If you pull on the suction one first with pressure, it tends to shoot a bit of oil out. So with all the tubes open, I'm just going to put the swager in there and tap it in lightly. Okay, I've tapped this swager in. It's a little bit of movement. I've done it on this one as well, 2/4 inch, and the 3/16 one, bit of play. Now we must remember that the compressor is open, and if you tilt it over, there's oil inside. So if you feel you have to tilt the compressor in order to get it in there, rather put the rubber plugs back, but this, I'll just keep it upright and put it in its position. Okay, it's in its position where we're going to install it. I have not yet mounted it with these little brackets. The pipes are still open, but if you look at the angle of the suction and this one, it doesn't line up very well. So we're going to have to bend these to make them line up. The same with the high side on this side. Now we can either bend the compressor, but just be careful if you bend the tube on the compressor, you don't kink it or damage it. And we get them, before we start welding, make sure the tubes line up very well. Okay, I've bent a little bit on the compressor pipe and on this one. We got it to line up pretty well. Same on that side. So we got these 2 tubes ready, and then this one I'm going to use for a charge pipe. That is where we're going to draw vacuum through and charge it with gas. So I normally put a little piece of 1/4 inch pipe onto a service valve. Okay, so what I've done now is I've put a piece of 1/4 inch, and it actually went into the compressor quite deep, because this, I've swaged this and this pipe fits nicely. And here's a little service valve that I keep reusing, so I'm just going to make a joint there. So this being copper onto copper, we have a rod called Silbro Loy, which is a copper to copper. We can weld there, but now these two are different. Even though this is copper and that is copper as well. We've got this fridge brazing material in between. Now brazing needs a very high temperature before it flows, where the silver solder and silver alloy does not. So what I do is, before I do this weld, I heat it up and I apply a little bit of flux powder to this. What the flux powder does is it actually brings down the melting point of the welding, and then I'm going to do this weld with silver solder. Now the silver solder that I use is a rod called Matty Braze 34, which has got a very high silver content in it, so this will flow very well with the welding that's there already, the fridge braze, and it will mix and become a new type of silver solder with a lower silver content. It will mix with this, and some of the silver solders with a low silver content use this same fridge brazing material in it as well, so it will be like a silver solder joint. And we'll do exactly the same with the steel pipe on the high side. Okay, I've done the welds here. That one there, silver solder. The one at the back, silver solder. This was just copper to copper and copper to copper here. On these welds that had the fridge braze on it, when I was welding it and I put the flux powder onto the fridge braze was still in a solid state. The minute the flux touched it, it became a liquid, and I mixed it with the silver solder and it made very nice joints there. Now we still have a system that is full of air and open, so the next step is to connect a gas bottle onto that service valve. Okay, what I've done now is I've attached a charge line to the valve here, which is connected onto a bottle, and I've got a gauge on my bottle, so when I open the tap, let a little bit of gas flow, it shows me the pressure in the suction. This is a bottle of R12 gas, which is very happily compatible with the 134A. So I'll just blow a little bit of gas in and put my finger underneath the high side. I can feel gas coming out and on the capillary, so I know I don't have a blockage. Now these Aruki compressors comes with a little dust cover, and there is an overload switch, and there's a PTC starter here, and we're going to connect that up now. The little overload switch just pushes onto the compressor. There's a little terminal on the top. You just stick it in there, and the PTC starter, it's got two little holes. You line it up with the bottom two pins and stick it in, and I'm just going to connect this compressor up so that it can just run for a half a minute before we do the rest of the welds. I've joined the two brown wires together here, and I've put a little terminal on the blue wire which we're going to plug into the PTC starter. These little terminals, I cut them off. The old compressor had a dummy connecting block where all the wires connect to, but this one doesn't. So I'm just going to put a bit of insulation tape around the brown wire, and the blue wire we can just plug straight into the PTC starter or the compressor. Okay, the electrical wires are connected here. The earth wire is still off. We'll connect that later, but if we plug this compressor in, it should start running. So what I'd like to do is just open this bottle, get a little bit of pressure on the charge line, and we plug the fridge in. We get it to run now. It's blowing gas out here, and we check the capillary. Capillary is open, it's blowing gas, and I like to blow a little bit of gas through. So it is like in that case, while I was blowing it through, a little bit of oil came out here, so that's nice. All the old dirt from the previous compressor is out. Now we can change the pencil dryer. This is how I get them from Aruki. They each individually wrapped in a little foil packet. The camera looks a bit bright, but it says 134A 12 15-gram pencil dryers. So we take it out of the packet. This is the pencil dryer. It comes with a 1/4 inch opening, and our connection there is going to be 3/16. So it's going to be very loose. So what I do is I just crimp this down to 3/16 before I weld it on. Okay, now I've crimped the end of the dryer down to 3/16. I use a TV antenna cable crimp. Now we must still remember that the welding on this tube is the fridge braze, which is, it's got a very high melting point, but I'll do exactly the same as the others. You put a little bit of flux on it, and the flux lowers the melting point, and we use the silver solder that mixes with the fridge braze, and we get a decent weld. What I do is I balance the pencil dryer like that, and I stick the little capillary into the dryer, but not too deep so it touches the strainer, and also not too shallow, otherwise you get a blockage. Okay, I've done the weld onto the top of the dryer with silver alloy rod, no flux required, a little bit of heat, nice penetration. Now we're going to do the other weld with silver solder. I've done the weld there with the silver solder, got a nice joint. So now we connect a vacuum pump onto the charge line that's going to the bottle, and we draw a vacuum. This is my vacuum pump made by Robin Air. Connected the charge line onto the vacuum pump, onto the tap, which is open. We draw a vacuum. Now a good vacuum pump, 2 minutes is all you need, and in that 2 minutes you can mount the compressor brackets and connect the earth wire. Okay, this is about 2 minutes worth of vacuum. The 2 brackets are on and the earth wire is connected. Now the first step you do is, while the vacuum pump runs, you close the service valve, switch the vacuum pump off, disconnect the charge line from the vacuum pump, connect it onto your gas bottle, open your gauge, and you'll see the tap, you see some pressure, and then we blow the air out of the charge line. We call it perching, so we just waste a little bit of air and gas. Close it and open the tap. While the tap is open, we switch the compressor on, let it run, and it will suck gas in through the service valve. Compressor is running, and we keep adding gas. Make sure it never goes into vacuum, and ideally we'd like it to settle on about 10 pounds, so we add a little bit more, and once it settles at about 10 pounds, we know we've almost got the right amount of gas in. It might be a little bit too much or a little bit too little, but we'll see later on when the fridge is cold. Okay, it's settled on about 10 pounds now. The compressor runs nicely. It's pumping nice and hot gas into the condenser here. Comes back, it's got an internal condenser which goes into the cabinet, comes out here to the dryer, so it seems alright. The dust cover is still off. If you feel confident enough, you can attach it while it's running, otherwise switch it off, put a dust cover on and switch it on again. And while it's running, I'm going to put a thermometer into the fridge, get it to the right running temperature, and then if frost forms on the suction here, there's too much gas, and if it doesn't freeze the whole evaporator, there's not enough. So we'll get the charge right closer to when it reaches the right temperature, and in the meantime I can take the defrost tray off the old compressor and mount it on here. I managed to get the old defrost tray off. It was stuck on the silicone, a tough one to get off, and all I do is I add a little bit more silicone to the bottom of it here with my silicone, and we just glue it back onto the top of the compressor. This is the little drain pipe where the water defrosts into, and the heat from the compressor will evaporate it. The silicone is on, it's glued on. Now the heat from the compressor will dry that silicone within 20 minutes. So it's just a dust cover off, and we need to get the right amount of gas in here in order before we close this off. I've mounted the dust cover while the compressor was still running. There is the clip is on in position. Just put the defrost tray straight while the glue dries, and now we're going to put a thermometer inside. Okay, the thermometer shows 15.2, 16.8. I've just taken it out of another fridge so it will settle. And what I've done is I've turned the thermostat on to maximum. We'll monitor the temperature. When we get to about 2 degrees Celsius, that's probably the temperature that you want the fridge to cycle at. There we will check the gas charge, add some more or blow some off, and then close it off. Fridge has been running for about 20 minutes, and there's frost starting to form on this tube here. Temperature inside the fridge is about 8 degrees Celsius, so it's not on running temperature yet, but this is an indication that there's too much gas in. So while it's running now, we just blow a little bit of gas off, and if need be, in a while we blow a little bit more, but just a little bit of gas so we know we've got too much gas in the system. Okay, I blew a little bit of the gas off. Now the frost is starting to melt on the suction, but we keep monitoring it, and we do not want any frost on the outside when your fridge reaches the running temperature. Temperature in the fridge is 5 degrees now, and it started forming frost on this tube again, so we do the same thing. We blow a little bit of gas off. I blew a little bit of gas off, and almost straight away it started melting. You can see it melting away from my finger there. So there's still too much gas in the system. We'd like this frost to be on the inside when the fridge reaches 2 degrees Celsius. Okay, the temperature inside the fridge is now about 2 degrees. This pipe coming out, the suction pipe, is nice and cold, but there's no frost on it. The whole evaporator is frozen inside. So we've got the right amount of gas in now. So now what I refer to as pinch it off. I have a vice grip with a little teeth that closes like that, which I pinch onto the copper pipe. Copper pipe is quite long. We'll cut it off and we'll weld it closed. I've got the pinching tool on, and with this pipe cutter here, we cut it off about an inch from the pinching tool, and that bit we're going to weld closed. Okay, I've welded the end closed. Now we can take the pinch off pliers off, and those two little flat bits where it was pinched, we just put a bit of welding on it to strengthen it. Okay, I've put a little bit of welding on that bit where I've pinched it. So now the fridge is below 2 degrees Celsius. It's going to get too cold soon. Suction is still nice and cold. We leave this pipe to cool down. We bend it in, and what I do now is turn the thermostat back slowly until the compressor cycles, and check the cycle period before we send it out. Okay, I've bent this pipe back now, and this dryer was sticking out here, but I just bent it in. I'd like the dryer always to be on a slightly angled downwards with a capillary to the bottom bit. They seem to work better that way, and everything looks quite neat. There's a little bit of scorching on the compressor here. I'll just take a cloth and clean that off, but this is how I change a compressor on a domestic fridge.